A tense encounter unfolds in the grand lobby of a luxury hotel when an unexpected guest arrives. The manager's arrogance meets the quiet dignity of a bystander, setting the tone for a confrontation that will shake reputations. Subtle hints of the protagonist's hidden abilities emerge, but the real twist remains just out of sight. "We don't serve people like you." The words cut through the marble air of the Wellington Grand's lobby like a blade. The chandeliers above shimmered, refracting light across polished floors, but even their beauty couldn't soften the bite of that sentence. Guests paused mid-step, suitcases rolling to a halt. Some glanced over their newspapers. A couple waiting at reception shifted uncomfortably. Behind the desk stood Mr. Lawson, the hotel's impeccably dressed manager, tall. Silver hair slicked back, his smile thin and weaponized. He was addressing a man in a tailored gray suit, Mr. Jang, whose watch alone could pay a year's salary for half the staff here. His brow furrowed, his lips moving quickly in Mandarin. The cadence was sharp, urgent, yet not a soul behind that counter seemed to understand a word. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jang," Lawson said loudly, slow and patronizing. "But if you want assistance, you'll have to speak English. None of my staff speak Mandarin." He gave a glance toward the polished brass elevators, clearly wishing the man would just leave. Olivia was 10 feet away, pushing a cleaning cart stacked with neatly folded white towels. Her uniform was crisp, her hair tucked beneath a simple headscarf. She didn't look up at first. Years of working in places like this had taught her to become invisible, but her grip on the cart tightened. She caught the humiliation in Mr. Jang's eyes. She heard the quiet ripple of judgment from the guests who didn't understand him, assuming his agitation was rudeness. Lawson leaned forward, lowering his voice but not enough to hide the venom. "I can't have this scene in my lobby. Please, leave. Before you make a bigger mess." Olivia's jaw tightened. She remembered the years in Beijing, the bitter winters, the endless late nights in the library, the professors who called her the girl who outshone the locals. She remembered the pride of earning her master's degree in international business entirely in Mandarin. She remembered the job rejections after moving back here, where no one cared about her fluency or her academic honors, where her skills became invisible behind a housekeeping cart. Mr. Jang tried again, frustration creeping into his voice, switching between Mandarin and fragmented English. He pointed toward the concierge desk, mimicking the shape of a pen in the air. Something about documents and meeting. Lawson straightened, his voice dripping with finality. "Sir, I don't have time for this." The sharp clang of Olivia's cleaning bucket hitting the marble stopped him. Every head turned. Slowly, she stepped forward. The room froze. The sounds were flawless, every tone precise, every syllable measured. Mandarin, spoken not just correctly, but with the ease of someone who had lived it, breathed it. Lawson blinked. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Mr. Jang's eyes widened in recognition and relief. "The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice." "I guess you were wrong." A murmur ran through the lobby. Cameras on phones discreetly lifted. The polished perfection of Wellington Grand had a crack now, and everyone could see it. Lawson's composure faltered for the first time. He looked around, searching for a way to dismiss what had just happened, to bury it beneath the weight of his authority. But the eyes of the lobby were on him, waiting for his response. Olivia turned back to Mr. Jang, switching again to Mandarin, her tone warm and professional. "Sir, please tell me what you need, and I'll make sure it's handled immediately." Mr. Jang began to explain, his relief palpable. The scene around them blurred, the curious stares, the shifting guests, even Lawson's tightening jaw. In this moment, Olivia was no longer invisible. She was the center of the lobby. And something in Lawson's face said he knew his control was slipping. As she wrote down Mr. Zhang's request, she felt his gratitude like a quiet flame between them. And somewhere deep inside, Olivia knew this was only the beginning. The murmur didn't stop when Olivia and Mr. Zhang stepped aside to finish their conversation. If anything, it grew louder, an undercurrent of astonished voices in English, French, and bits of Mandarin from tourists who knew just enough to recognize fluency when they heard it. I saw. Bellhop leaned toward the front desk clerk. I thought. None of us spoke Mandarin? She's housekeeping, the clerk whispered back, as if the word itself was some kind of disqualifier. I didn't even know she. He stopped mid-sentence when he noticed Lawson's eyes on him. The manager stood like a statue near the reception podium, but Olivia caught the small signs, a finger tapping against his thigh, the rigid line of his jaw, the way his gaze darted to every phone still lifted in the lobby. Mr. Zhang handed her a stack of documents from his briefcase. He said quickly, "These need to be signed today, very important." She read the Mandarin text effortlessly, her eyes scanning faster than even he expected. "You have a meeting with the city's Cultural Investment Board in an hour," she translated softly. "If these aren't signed, the project doesn't move forward." He nodded. "I've been waiting here 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Olivia felt a cold heaviness in her chest. She glanced toward Lawson, who seemed more concerned with the onlookers than the guest he had just humiliated. She handed the documents to the concierge, speaking firmly in English. "These are for the mayor's cultural investment office. They need to be signed and couriered now. Please treat this as urgent." The concierge hesitated, eyes flicking to Lawson for approval. Lawson didn't say a word, just gave a curt nod. Lips pressed in a line so tight they almost disappeared. Mr. Zhang thanked Olivia again, this time with a small bow. She returned it politely, feeling the weight of the lobby stairs pressing against her back as she pushed her cart toward the service corridor. The whispers followed her. By the time she reached the housekeeping office on the second floor, the story had already spread. Maria, the head of housekeeping, raised her eyebrows. "So now you're the hotel's secret translator?" She teased, but her voice held caution. "It was nothing," Olivia replied, hanging her headscarf in her locker. "He just needed help." Maria closed the door behind them, lowering her voice. "Lawson doesn't like surprises, especially ones that make him look bad in front of guests. You need to be careful." Olivia gave a faint, humorless smile. "I was careful. I didn't even tell him where I learned Mandarin." Maria's eyes softened. "And maybe that's why you still have a job." Down in the manager's office, the air was different, thick, tense. Lawson stood at the window overlooking the lobby, arms crossed. Across from him sat Mr. Reeves, the hotel's director of operations, flipping through a set of emails on his tablet. "She embarrassed you," Reeves said without looking up. "She undermined me," Lawson corrected sharply. "A maid shouldn't be inserting herself into guest affairs, especially high-value clients." Reeves finally looked at him. "And yet she saved a potential investor from walking out. You think Zhang's going to forget that?" Lawson's lips curled into something between a smirk and a snarl. "No, which means I'll have to find another way to remind everyone who runs this hotel." That night, long after the guests had gone to bed and the lobby lights dimmed, Olivia sat in the staff cafeteria with a small bowl of rice and vegetables. She should have been tired. Her shift had ended an hour ago, but something kept her awake. Not the humiliation she'd witnessed. Not even Lawson's glare. It was the look in Mr. Zhang's eyes when she spoke Mandarin, the way recognition and respect had replaced frustration. It had been a long time since anyone here had looked at her like that. As she stirred her food, she didn't notice Maria walking up behind her. "You're thinking about today," Maria said. Olivia smiled faintly. "I'm thinking maybe today wasn't the end of it." Maria tilted her head. What do you mean? Olivia's eyes shifted toward the lobby doors she could just barely see from here. Lawson doesn't like losing control. And I don't think he's done yet. By morning, she would be proven right, because at 9:15 a.m., a memo would appear on the staff bulletin board, a new rule, effective immediately. All staff are to remain in their assigned duties at all times. Direct guest engagement outside your position is strictly prohibited without managerial approval. And Olivia's name would already be underlined in Lawson's private copy. Printed memo was still pinned to the staff bulletin board the next morning, its corners curling slightly from the damp air in the break room. Olivia stood in front of it, reading the words again. She already knew them by heart. All staff are to remain in their assigned duties at all times. Direct guest engagement outside your position is strictly prohibited without managerial approval. The letters were sharp, as if Lawson had chosen a font that could cut. Maria appeared beside her, coffee in hand. He's making it official, she murmured. You're not supposed to talk to guests unless he says so. Olivia gave a slow nod. I'm sure the timing is just a coincidence, she said flatly. Maria's laugh held no humor. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. The day passed under the weight of the rule. Olivia worked the 8th floor suites, her cart moving silently down plush hallways. Each time she passed a guest, she gave a polite nod but nothing more. She could feel the unspoken rules sitting on her shoulders like an invisible yoke dot around mid-afternoon. She stepped into an empty service elevator, pushing the cart in ahead of her. Just as the doors began to close, a voice called out in Mandarin. Wait. The doors slid open again, revealing Mr. Jiang, briefcase in hand. He smiled warmly when he saw her. He said, I'm glad to see you. She hesitated. The memo flashed in her mind. She greeted politely, keeping her tone professional. He stepped in, pressing the button for the lobby. I looked for you yesterday evening, he said in Mandarin. I wanted to thank you again. You saved me from losing a very important deal. Olivia gave a modest smile. It was nothing. I was just in the right place. He shook his head. No, it was skill and respect. Not everyone gives those freely. Her cheeks warmed. For a moment, the elevator hummed. Quietly, the numbers ticking down. Then he added, I would like to invite you to dinner. A proper thank you. Somewhere nice. Her heart gave a small jolt. That's kind, but I'm not sure my manager would. The elevator doors opened to reveal Lawson standing in the lobby. His eyes narrowed the instant he saw them together. Miss Brooks, Lawson said, his tone like ice. Your cart belongs on the 8th floor. Not down here. Yes, sir, Olivia replied, wheeling it forward. Mr. Jiang stepped between them, addressing Lawson in measured English. This woman is the only reason I stayed in your hotel. She is worth far more than you realize. Lawson's jaw flexed, but he kept his voice steady. And I appreciate her work, Mr. Jiang. Now, if you'll excuse us, Miss Brooks has duties to attend to. Olivia glanced at Mr. Jiang, silently apologizing. He gave her a small nod as she pushed her cart toward the service corridor. She could feel Lawson's gaze burning into her back the entire way. That evening, she returned to the staff lockers to find her schedule changed. No longer was she on the upper suites or the main guest floors. Instead, she was assigned to the basement laundry for the next 2 weeks. No guest contact. No public spaces. Maria found her staring at the schedule. He's burying you, she said quietly. Olivia let out a slow breath. Then I guess I'll just have to dig myself out. The next morning, Lawson sat in his office, sipping black coffee. His phone buzzed a message from Reeves. Jiang requested Brooks as his translator for tomorrow's city meeting. Says he won't attend otherwise. Lawson's smile was cold. Oh, we'll see about that. he muttered by the time Olivia clocked out that night. She sensed the lines being drawn. On one side, Lawson and his rules, waiting for her to slip. On the other, Mr. Jang, whose recognition was beginning to spread beyond the lobby. Somewhere in the middle, she stood still pushing her cart, but no longer invisible. And for the first time in years, she felt the faint spark of a fight worth having. The Wellington Grand's lobby gleamed under the morning light, but the air was heavy. The city's Cultural Investment Board was due at noon, and Mr. Jang's meeting had been whispered about all week. Staff polished brass railings twice over, straightened rugs, and arranged fresh orchids near the main entrance. Olivia was nowhere near the action. She stood in the humid basement laundry, steam rising from the presses, folding crisp white sheets in perfect rectangles. Every so often, she glanced at the clock. 9:47 She hadn't been told a thing about the meeting, not officially. But she didn't need a memo to know what Lawson was doing. Upstairs, Lawson leaned over the front desk, voice low as he spoke to the concierge. If Mr. Jang asks for Brooks, you tell him she's unavailable. No exceptions. She's got laundry duty all day. The concierge hesitated. Sir, he specifically requested her. That's exactly why she's not coming, Lawson said, his tone brooking no argument. We'll use one of the Mandarin-speaking staff from the banquet division. Get Chun. From catering, he's passable. Passable. That was Lawson's strategy. Not to outright refuse Mr. Jang, but to quietly downgrade his experience until Olivia faded into the background again. At 10:15 a.m., Olivia's phone buzzed in her pocket. A single text from Maria. You didn't hear this from me. He's replacing you. Meeting at noon. Olivia stared at the steam drifting from the presses. Her first instinct was to let it go. Rules were rules, and Lawson had made it clear. Stay in your lane. But then she remembered Mr. Jang's expression in the elevator, the respect in his voice when he told her she was worth more than Lawson realized. And she remembered the memo with her name underlined. She wasn't going to disappear quietly. Her chance came. Unexpectedly. At 11:02 a.m., Mr. Reeves, director of operations, appeared in the laundry room doorway, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled. Miss Brooks, he said, glancing behind him before stepping inside. Olivia straightened. Yes, sir. He held out a sealed envelope. Mr. Jang asked me to deliver this personally. He said you'd know what to do. She took it carefully. Inside was a single handwritten note in Mandarin. Please be at the meeting room at 11:50. Don't tell Lawson. Olivia looked up sharply. Sir, Reeves raised a hand. I don't want to know. I just run this place. He gave the faintest smirk before turning back toward the stairs. By 11:48 a.m., Olivia had swapped her housekeeping uniform for a simple black dress from her locker, one she kept for job interviews she never got. She tied her hair neatly, applied a touch of lip balm, and took a steadying breath. The meeting room on the mezzanine level overlooked the lobby, with floor-to-ceiling windows letting in the midday sun. A long polished table gleamed beneath crystal pendant lights. Around it sat members of the Cultural Investment Board, their folders stacked neatly before them. Mr. Jang was at the head of the table, speaking animatedly in Mandarin to a gray-haired man beside him. When he saw Olivia step in, his face broke into a relieved smile. You came. Lawson, standing near the coffee service, turned at the sound of his voice. For a split second, his expression was pure disbelief. Then it hardened into something colder. The next hour unfolded like a chess match. Olivia translated every word with clarity and precision, her tone warm yet formal. She moved between Mr. Jang and the city board with effortless rhythm, ensuring no detail was lost. In translation, from the corner of her eye, she caught Lawson's barely concealed irritation. He poured coffee, refilled water glasses, shuffled papers, anything to distract himself from the fact that the meeting he tried to control was slipping beyond his reach. When it ended, handshakes were exchanged, contracts initialed, and promises made. The board members left in good spirits, some even thanking Olivia, directly switching awkwardly between English and Mandarin to do so. Mr. Jiang turned to her. Without you, this would have been a disaster. You understand things? Not just words, but people. Olivia felt a quiet swell of pride. I'm glad I could help. Lawson waited until Mr. Jiang stepped out to take a phone call before approaching her. His smile was tight, his voice a whisper only she could hear. Think this changes anything? You're still just housekeeping. Olivia met his gaze evenly. Funny thing about languages, Mr. Lawson, they open doors you didn't even know were locked. For a moment, they stood in silence, the hum of the lobby below drifting up like distant static. Then Lawson stepped back, his jaw working. This wasn't over. Not for him. Not for her. 2 days after the city meeting, the Wellington Grand's lobby was buzzing with a different kind of energy. There was no mistaking it. People were talking about the deal. The cultural investment project was officially moving forward, promising millions in revenue, tourism growth, and a long-term partnership between the city and Mr. Jiang's consortium. Local news outlets covered the story, but the real surprise was how many of them included a small, almost throwaway detail. The negotiations were smoothed over by a bilingual staff member who translated seamlessly between parties. No name was given, but in the tight-knit hotel world, it didn't take long for whispers to point toward the black maid who spoke perfect Mandarin. Olivia first felt the shift when she stepped into the staff cafeteria that morning. Heads turned. Maria grinned from across the room, waving her over. You're famous, Maria teased, sliding her a folded newspaper. On page 3, a photo showed Mr. Jiang shaking hands with the city's investment director. Behind them, slightly out of focus but still recognizable, Olivia stood with a folder in hand. She frowned. I didn't even know they took this picture, Maria shrugged. Guess you're part of history now. Upstairs in his office, Lawson wasn't smiling. The article lay open on his desk, his fingers drumming a slow, irritated rhythm on the wood. He picked up the phone. Get me Miss Price from corporate PR, he said flatly. We need to control this story before it gets out of hand. By noon, Olivia was summoned to the lobby, not by Lawson, but by Mr. Jiang himself. He was speaking with a young reporter from the city paper, who had a voice recorder in hand and a practiced smile. Miss Brooks, Mr. Jiang called warmly. Come, this is Miss Hall. She's writing a feature on the project. She'd like to meet you, Olivia blinked. Me? Yes, Miss Hall said brightly. Mr. Jiang tells me you were instrumental in making the meeting happen. We'd love to get a quote from you, maybe even a short profile. Olivia hesitated. She could practically feel Lawson's disapproval radiating from somewhere nearby, even though she couldn't see him. Still, she smiled politely. I'm not. Sure, I'm the story here, but I'm happy to say a few words about the experience. They stepped aside to a quieter corner, the reporter jotting notes as Olivia spoke. She described the moment in the lobby when Mr. Jiang first needed help, and how important cultural understanding was in building trust. You're very humble, Ms. Hall said. Most people would have taken more credit. Olivia shook her head. It's not about credit. It's about doing the right thing when it matters. From across the lobby, Lawson watched every word, his jaw tightening. This wasn't just about losing control anymore. This was about visibility. The more people knew Olivia's face, the harder it would be to quietly remove her. If she became tied to the hotel's public image, she'd be untouchable, unless he found a way to make her look like a liability instead of an asset. That evening, in the dim light of his office, Lawson began his new plan. He pulled up Olivia's employee file, scanning for anything late clock-ins, minor complaints, anything that could be shaped into a pattern. There wasn't much. But there was one small note from her first month on the job. Guest reported cart blocking hallway. It wasn't enough. Not yet. He sat back in his chair, staring at the city skyline through his window. If she wants the spotlight, he murmured to himself, then let's see how she handles the shadows. The next morning, Olivia arrived to find a letter slipped under her locker door. No envelope, no signature, just a folded sheet of paper. In neat, precise handwriting, "Be careful, someone is digging." "Close the door, Olivia." The manager's tone was less commanding now, more measured, as if the walls had ears. Olivia stepped inside the dimly lit office. The blinds were half closed, slanting sunlight across the mahogany desk where Mr. Whitmore sat, his hands folded as though holding something fragile. A faint trace of cologne mixed with the stale smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air. He gestured toward the leather chair opposite him. "Sit." She obeyed, her movements calm, deliberate, the same way she had handled her cleaning cart in the lobby an hour earlier. When his panic had first unraveled, he leaned forward, lowering his voice. "About earlier? What you did with Mr. John." "Impressive, very impressive." Olivia remained silent, her face unreadable. Whitmore forced a smile. "Now you understand, don't you? That kind of skill is valuable, but it also comes with, let's say, certain boundaries." "Boundaries?" Her voice was soft but edged with something sharp. Double quotes, yes. "The Wellington has a certain image. Our guests expect a particular standard from our staff, both in appearance and
role."
He let the implication hang in the air like the faint hum of the desk fan. "You mean my uniform," Olivia said flatly. Whitmore's smile faltered. "I mean, you're a housekeeper. You have duties and speaking to VIP guests in ways that well could be misinterpreted." He trailed off, tapping a gold pen against his knuckle. Olivia met his gaze without blinking. "So, my ability to make a guest feel welcome in their own language is a risk to your image?" He shifted in his seat, his voice lowering another notch. "It's not personal. It's about control. If Mr. Jang starts asking for you directly, bypassing our chain of command, that creates problems for me." "And for the hotel?" He hesitated. "For both." The silence between them thickened. Outside, faint clinks of silverware and murmured voices floated from the dining area, as if the world beyond the blinds had no idea a quiet war was brewing here. Finally, Whitmore leaned back, forcing an easy tone. "Look, I'd like to offer you a little bonus, a token of appreciation for your discretion." He slid an envelope across the desk, its flap unsealed but clearly holding crisp bills inside. Olivia glanced at it but didn't touch it. "So you want me to pretend I never spoke Mandarin to Mr. Jang?" He chuckled awkwardly. "Just keep your talents under wraps unless I say otherwise." Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Mr. Whitmore, in Beijing we have a saying, paper cannot wrap up a fire." He frowned. "Meaning?" "It means the truth has a way of escaping, no matter how tightly you try to contain it." She rose from her chair, leaving the envelope where it lay. Before opening the door, she paused and looked back. "Thank you for the meeting. I'll remember everything you said." Something in her tone made his jaw tighten. She wasn't threatening him outright, but he could feel the subtle weight of her words. For the first time since they'd met, the balance in the room tilted, and not in his favor. As she stepped out, Whitmore exhaled slowly, feeling a prickling unease in his chest. He didn't know why, but it felt like he had just shaken hands with the storm. The heavy oak doors of the Wellington's private boardroom shut with a muted thud, sealing the air in a tense bubble. The mahogany table gleamed under the recessed lighting, but no one was admiring it. This was not a meeting about renovations or guest satisfaction scores. This was damage control. Gerald Hayes sat at the head of the table, hands clasped as if in prayer, but his eyes darted like a man cornered. His usually confident baritone was thinner now, laced with urgency. "Let's keep this internal," he said, scanning the room. "A misunderstanding, that's all. We tell Mr. Jang it was a mix-up, language barrier, miscommunication." Across from him, Evelyn Shaw, the hotel's operations director, raised a skeptical brow. She was not one to be soothed by easy narratives. "Gerald," she said, voice calm but cutting, "what I heard in that lobby wasn't a misunderstanding. It was panic and dismissiveness. You didn't ask if anyone spoke Mandarin, you assumed no one did." Gerald's jaw tightened. "Evelyn, with all due respect, we don't need moral grandstanding right now. We need to protect the brand." In the corner, two junior managers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, eyes fixed on the table. The door opened quietly. All eyes turned. It was Anthony, head of security. Not usually one to attend board meetings, but he carried himself like a man who had information too important to ignore. "I thought you should see this," Anthony said, placing a sleek black tablet on the table. A video began to play. Security. Footage from the lobby. Crisp audio. Gerald's own voice, tense and urgent. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jang, but none of our staff speak Mandarin." Then Olivia's quiet entrance into frame, her fluent, graceful Mandarin filling the space. The visible relief on Mr. Zhang's face. The slow, dawning humiliation in Gerald's eyes. When the clip ended, silence settled in the room like dust. "Who else has seen this?" Gerald demanded. Anthony folded his arms. "Every staff member on shift that day, and now you." Gerald's mask of composure cracked. "This could go viral." "Do you have any idea?" "Yes," Evelyn interrupted, her voice sharper now. "I do. I have an idea of how this could go. If the story gets out, we'll look arrogant, out of touch, and dismissive of our own staff's abilities. Unless," she paused deliberately, "we control the narrative." Gerald looked wary. "Control it how?" "By making Olivia the hero," Evelyn said plainly. "Publicly, celebrate her skills. Acknowledge our failure to recognize them sooner. Invite the press. Make it right." The words hung in the air. For a moment, Gerald seemed to consider them. Then his mouth twisted in something that was supposed to be a smile but wasn't. "Or," he said slowly, "we could thank her quietly, keep her out of the spotlight, and move on. Less risk." Evelyn leaned forward. "Less risk for you, perhaps, but more for the hotel. Times are changing, Gerald. People care about stories like hers. They care about respect." Anthony's deep voice rumbled from the corner. "And if you don't tell the story, someone else will. Maybe Mr. Jang himself." Gerald's knuckles whitened on the table edge. A light knock on the door made everyone turn again. Olivia stepped in, hesitant but composed, her housekeeping uniform still neat from the day's shift. She had not been invited, but her presence was impossible to ignore. "I heard my name," she said simply. Evelyn smiled faintly. "We were discussing the events in the lobby." Gerald straightened in his chair, putting on his managerial mask again. "Olivia, we appreciate your assistance earlier. You went above and beyond. That will be noted in your file." Olivia's gaze didn't waver. "Noted in my file," she repeated softly. Then, in flawless Mandarin, she said, "Recognition is only meaningful when it is spoken aloud." Even those who didn't understand the words felt the weight of them. Mr. Jang's voice suddenly echoed in the doorway. "Beautiful," he said. He stepped into the room as if he owned it, which, given the size of his investments, He merely did. His presence made even Gerald sit straighter. I came to thank Miss Olivia personally, Mr. Jiang continued, and to suggest that the Wellington consider promoting her. Her education and fluency in Mandarin would be valuable. The pause before valuable was deliberate. Gerald's eyes darted to Evelyn, then back to Mr. Jiang. Of course. We'll consider it. Mr. Jiang smiled, the kind of smile that meant I'll know if you don't. See that you do. As he left, Olivia followed quietly, but before the door closed behind her, she glanced back at Gerald. The look in her eyes wasn't smug or triumphant. It was calm, unshakable. The kind of look that said, without a single word, you don't control this story anymore. The banquet hall was glowing in golden light, chandeliers casting their warm shimmer over the long table draped in ivory linen. Waiters moved in a synchronized ballet, laying down polished silverware and crystal glasses. The scent of braised duck, jasmine rice, and plum sauce drifted through the air like an invitation to indulgence. At the head of the table sat Mr. Hallstrom, his sharp tuxedo pressed so crisp it could slice arrogance itself. Beside him were 6 Chinese investors, dressed in perfectly tailored suits, speaking in a gentle hum of Mandarin. Across the room, Amara adjusted the neatly folded napkins at each place setting, her movements deliberate and steady. Hallstrom's eyes narrowed as he watched her. This is my stage tonight, and she's going to trip on it. He leaned toward the interpreter sitting at his side. Make sure you translate everything I say, he murmured. I want them to know how incompetent my staff can be. Especially her. The interpreter hesitated. Sir, perhaps it's not. Do it, Hallstrom snapped out as guests began to take their seats. Hallstrom stood, raising his champagne flute. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, smiling broadly, we are honored to welcome our distinguished partners from Beijing and Shanghai. The interpreter repeated his words fluently in Mandarin. Then Hallstrom's smile tightened. But before we begin, I must apologize for the shortcomings of our staff tonight. Some people here are simply not trained for a setting this refined. The words rolled off his tongue like poison wrapped in honey. His eyes flicked toward Amara as he continued, deliberately switching to English. You see, when you hire anyone, they might not even know how to fold a napkin correctly, or how to serve without spilling. Polite laughter bubbled from a few of the local guests who didn't know any better. The Chinese investors, however, glanced at each other awkwardly, their smiles fading. Amara kept her back straight, her hands steady. She finished pouring tea for the eldest guest and stepped back, eyes calm, face unreadable. Hallstrom wasn't done. He looked directly at her and switched into broken, mocking Mandarin. She doesn't understand what we're saying. Few investors raised their brows at the crude accent and clumsy grammar. Amara didn't. Flinched. Instead, she stepped forward slowly, her voice smooth and clear as polished jade. She began, in flawless Mandarin, Your hospitality is appreciated, but your words tonight are neither appropriate nor professional. Our esteemed guests deserve truth, not mockery. The entire table froze. Hallstrom's champagne glass trembled in his hand. Amara turned to the investors, her tone warm and respectful. Still speaking in perfect Mandarin. Please forgive my manager's comments. I have ensured every detail of tonight meets the highest standard, and I hope you enjoy the dinner we have prepared for you. One of the Chinese investors chuckled softly, clearly impressed. Another gave a small nod of approval. A third leaned toward Hallstrom and said in English, She speaks better Mandarin than most of my staff. Hallstrom's face burned a deep crimson. He tried to force a laugh, but it came out hollow. Well, I suppose our maid has hidden talents. Amara offered a polite bow. Not hidden, sir, just overlooked. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then the sound of chopsticks and quiet conversation resumed. But the power in the air had shifted completely. Hallstrom could feel it. His authority had been punctured, and everyone in the room knew it. What he didn't realize was that this moment was only the first crack. The rest of the wall he had built around himself was about to come crashing down. The ballroom of the East Pearl Hotel was transformed into a stage for damage control. Cameras lined the back, reporters crowded the front, and the hum of whispered gossip filled the air. Mr. Lang stood at the podium, sweat glistening on his forehead despite the air conditioning. His usual smug grin had been replaced with a tight, strained smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, clearing his throat, "there have been misunderstandings." Misunderstandings? Li Mei, seated discreetly at the side, felt her jaw tighten. She had seen misunderstandings before: a wrong room key, a misread reservation. This was not one of them. "I want to express my sincere regret for any discomfort caused," Mr. Lang continued, avoiding the word racism like it was poison. "This hotel values diversity. The crowd's murmur rose into an audible wave of skepticism. Phones were already streaming his awkward apology live. A reporter from the Beijing Daily stood. "Mr. Lang, are you denying the video that shows you berating and threatening Ms. Li Mei?" His jaw twitched. "That video was taken out of context," another reporter cut in. "And the audio recording of you telling her, 'People like you don't belong here,' was that also out of context?" His fingers gripped the podium so tightly the wood creaked. I was under stress." Gasps rippled across the room. It was then that the hotel's PR manager, pale-faced, approached the podium and whispered something urgently in Mr. Lang's ear. His face drained of color. The PR manager turned to the crowd. "At this time, Ms. Li Mei would like to say a few words." The room erupted in clicks of camera shutters as Li Mei rose. She walked to the podium with the quiet, steady confidence of someone who knew the truth was her greatest weapon. She looked at the audience, then at Mr. Lang, and finally spoke in flawless Mandarin, her tone calm yet razor-sharp. "Dignity cannot be measured by position." A hush fell over the room. "Many of you think this is just about one man's words," she continued, "but it's about the silence that follows. It's about the people who look away because speaking up feels dangerous. And it's about knowing your worth even when someone in power tries to strip it away." Her gaze locked with Mr. Lang's. "I did not come here to destroy anyone. I came here to work hard and contribute. But if my existence challenges your prejudice, that is your burden to fix, not mine." The crowd erupted into applause. Some even stood. Mr. Lang, cornered in the spotlight, looked as though the ground beneath him had vanished. His mouth opened, then closed. No words came. The moment was already trending online before the conference ended. #Dignity in Mandarin lit up Chinese social media. By the time Li Mei stepped away from the podium, the nation had chosen its side, and it wasn't his. The sun rose over Shanghai with a golden haze, but inside the East Pearl Hotel, the atmosphere was anything but warm. The once bustling lobby stood eerily quiet. Tourists checked out early, corporate guests canceled reservations, and the phone lines rang with complaints. Overnight, the hotel's 5-star rating on travel sites plummeted to 3. Mr. Lang sat in his office, staring at the computer screen. His inbox was flooded with termination letters from high-profile clients. The board had called an emergency meeting. His career, the thing he had sacrificed friendships and decency for, was slipping through his fingers. When the call came from HR, he didn't bother pretending surprise. "Mr. Lang," the voice said crisply, "the board has decided your services are no longer required. Security will escort you from the premises." The click of the phone seemed louder than usual. Across the building, Li Mei was quietly gathering her things. She had no intention of staying here after what had happened, but she wanted to leave on her own terms. As she walked through the lobby, a group of staff, from bellboys to chefs, stopped to applaud. Some bowed slightly, a gesture of deep respect. "You didn't just stand up for yourself," said Mrs. Chun from housekeeping. "You stood up for all of us." Li Mei smiled softly. "We all deserve dignity." Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Li Mei?" A smooth, confident voice asked in Mandarin. "This is Wei Jian, CEO of Lotus International Hotels. I saw the press conference. We need people like you, people who aren't afraid to speak the truth." Li Mei's heart skipped. I'm just a maid." "No," Wei Jiang said firmly. "You're a leader. I want you to join our management training program. Full scholarship. And when you're ready, a position at one of our top properties." For a long moment, she was silent, staring at the city skyline outside her window. It felt like the horizon had suddenly opened wider than she had ever imagined. "I accept," she said at last. That night, she visited her grandmother's small apartment. The old woman listened to the story with moist eyes. "You see, Li Mei," she said gently, "when you speak with truth in your heart, even the most powerful must listen." The news of Mr. Lang's firing spread faster than the original scandal. Photographs of him being escorted out, head down, suit rumpled, were splashed across social media. Public opinion was merciless. His name, once associated with success, was now shorthand for arrogance and downfall. Meanwhile, Li Mei boarded a train to Beijing for her first day in the new program. As the city lights blurred past her window, she felt both nervous and exhilarated. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a flood of messages from strangers. "You gave me courage today. Thank you for speaking up. You made us proud." She smiled, tucking the phone away. She didn't need fame. She didn't need revenge. What she had was far greater, a new beginning. As the train sped forward, Li Mei whispered to herself in Mandarin and English both. Dignity cannot be measured by position. And for the first time in a long while, she truly believed it.